we need a platform that respects privacy, security, and it's just easier to use, that's more inclusive. How do you find people who want that product, right? Something they teach us in Y Combinator is to always be talking to users. That was made for gamers, right? But a lot of Web3 is hanging out on Discord. Almost all of Web3 has communication on Discord. The problem with Discord is that I am co-founder of Console.xyz, and Console is an alternative to Discord. It's like a Web3 open source Discord. Well, I know. Have you used Discord before? I'm assuming, right?
Yep.
Many of the people here have. So, if you're used to Discord, Discord's really great because it's a chat app. Think like Slack or just any kind of chat, but Discord is a specific chat app that was made for gamers, right? But a lot of Web3 is hanging out on Discord. Almost all of Web3 has communication on Discord. The problem with Discord is that it gets hacked a lot. It's really spammy. The user interface is really difficult to use. And so a year ago, we started looking at that problem because we believe in Web3 and the principles of Web3. And we believe that if we're going to build Web3, like us, along with everyone else, we need a platform that respects privacy, security, and it's just easier to use, that's more inclusive of the rest of the world, not just like crypto, very specific crypto people. So we want to make that platform, and that's what Console is. It's just a better designed, more secure chat platform for Web3.
So is the difference just Web3? Because let's say I'm a layman, I don't know what Web3 is. I don't even know what Web2 is. I'm just using Discord to chat with my friends. So
Yeah.
Is there a chance I will think that Console is better than Discord? Or it's like the same thing, just the Web3 protocols are different?
That's a really good question. I think many people use the word Web3, and sometimes, we know about what it means in like a small circle because it's kind of a jargony word. But you're right. Like a lot of people don't even know what that means. When we launch, we're launching Console now. We have, a few dozen people using it, but we're just kind of in the early days. And we're really trying to focus on people who are already on Discord and kind of understand the benefits of it. But your point is really great, and that's our bigger vision over the next year. Is it doesn't have to be, we don't have to use the term Web3. To me, really what that means is just that it's decentralized, meaning that, and you own your data, right? That users can own their data, and the identity is decentralized. So when you come to Console, imagine you come to any chat platform now, you have to give a lot of your private data, whether that's your email, your password, your telephone number for like Signal or Telegram. But with Console, you only give your private key and your web wallet. So basically, it's for anyone who has a web wallet and that wants to own their keys. Sometimes we say, in crypto, they say, what's the phrase? It's like, not your keys, not your money, So it's kind of like, we're like, well, if you don't own your keys, it's also not your keys, not your identity, right? So it's like, now you can own your identity with Console. So that's the bigger picture of where we're going with this.
That is interesting. Chris, see, Discord is already there. Discord already has a big consumer base. What is stopping Discord to shift to Web3 protocols? Like, I'm not saying shift the entire Discord app to Web3. Why can't they build something new based on the Web3 protocols? Because they also know that Web3 is the next thing. The world is pivoting towards Web3. So why can't they do something similar?
That's a great question. I feel like you're setting me up with that one even because I don't know if you know, but they tried, right? Discord tried to move to Web3 platform. It was just last November 2021. They announced they were going to allow MetaMask, so a very popular web wallet, MetaMask integration. And when they announced that, there was a huge backlash because the truth is, like, Discord's very popular, and its biggest supporters, biggest users, it's not Web3, it's gamers, and the gamers don't want that, and so that's why It's Discord, I believe, is so complicated. It's kind of like a city, like a city that's trying to like adjust to two different kinds of people, and because of that, it's not useful for anyone. So, for example, like threaded messages, for example, like threaded messages are so helpful for people focusing like on Slack or like communicating, or like everybody has
Hmm.
threaded messages, but Discord really resisted until last year. Finally, last year they added threaded messages for the people that want that focus. But threaded messages aren't good when you're gaming. When you're gaming, you want quick. It needs to go down the screen. You don't have time to go off left and right. So now, instead of going one way or the other, Discord has both threaded messages and replies. But I mean, I'll ask you this question: Did you know? Have you? No, better question is: Have you ever used threaded messages? And my guess is no, or very limited, because it's just
Yeah.
confusing to have so many options. People don't know which one to use, and they rarely use them. So that's the design problem, and that's why they're kind of locked in with the game community.
When we talk about Web3 protocols, the one thing that is flashy is ownership of data. But how does like really ownership of data help you? Because see, I'm a tech person, I know the advantages. Someone not into tech, what do they infer from ownership of data? How can they think that it's beneficial?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question, and I think slowly people are opening up their minds to become more aware of the benefits of owning your own data. Although I do think it is slow. Like I wish it was quicker. But what I mean by that is over the past decade, we've seen a lot of like really public big news and mainstream news headlines about how our data is mishandled. Everything from in 2013 when Edward Snowden, he basically showed the world that there's basically the government has like a version of Google where they could Google into your email like and read everything. They could Google into your photos. They could Google into your entire chat history. So I think that woke us up a little bit. And then we see issues like with Cambridge Analytica and a lot of the Facebook misuse of data, where data is being used, identities are being used to spread misinformation and disinformation and propaganda. And these are all external facing issues, and I think we all understand that they have like big impacts on the world. But to your question, is like, how do we make that personal? How do we say like I need to change because and that's the challenge, I think. But I think people are waking up, as I said, like more people are moving to Signal, more people are using to Telegram and using private chat as much as possible. I think when there's an option and the option is easy to use, and I think it's an easy to understand, a good UI. Eventually, there's empires crumble, and I think
Hmm.
like the Facebook empire is like slowly crumbling. I think and people are going to look for a place to go. And I think when given the opportunity, I think a great UI with that protects your values. I think people want that. I think that makes a lot of sense.
So basically, it's up to the developers to build something for the consumers that attracts them just for the basic looks and everything, and behind the scenes helps their protect their data.
That's the idea.
Right, right, right. Awesome.
100%. Yeah.
So, Chris, now you're building a console, and previously you have built 1 month high read. So, what's your experience? What's your background like?
Yeah, I was a developer for about like 8 years, and then started teaching people how to code. And I worked at a company called General Assembly, which became rather large. Around which time I started 1 month. 1 month is a place to learn how to code in 30 days. So we went through Y Combinator and started that company in New York City around 2013. Around which time I started teaching at universities. I also teach at Columbia University now. And so I think, coding and teaching people how to code has been a theme. But, always in startups, always building. So it was just a really cool opportunity for me after leaving my company last year, right around this time last year. I left being a Web 2 founder and came to start and build in Web 3. and it just seems like a really, blue ocean, like a lot of opportunity, a lot of excitement. Yeah, a lot of smart people that it's just kind of fun to work in this field. So yeah, it's been a good change.
Just a quick question. Like you said that folks could learn to code in 30 days. So
Yeah.
how much they learn? Like what did you teach them? Like what did they learn in 30 days?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, when you're coding, you know, to me, it's always been, well, what do you want to achieve, right? It's like I know Python, right, but I don't know everything about Python. But if
Hmm.
you give me like an hour or two, like I could probably figure it
Yeah.
out, right? So with our classes, like we really just believe that if you're starting to code, the hardest thing's getting started. It's like installing the software, the pip. It's like knowing who the good teachers are. It's like knowing a project that you can do in 30 days. And so with 1 month, we gave students 4 projects, 1 project a week that we knew that they could accomplish within 7 days. And we gave them videos and lectures to do that. So that by the end of the month, you're completing 4 projects, whether it's like in the JavaScript course, you're making a search engine that searches for GIFs using the Giphy API, or in the Python course, you're doing some um, data mapping and displaying of data, like visualizations. There's certain things you can really do with just like a little bit of code, and so that's really what we encourage, to give people that boost of confidence and to give them that basic skill. So you're totally right. Like by the end of 30 days, like you're not going to go work at Google, but you'll know enough to maybe take on a challenge and to know where to go from there. That's the idea.
Hmm. Interesting thing to note here is that you were a Web 2 founder and now you're building something in Web 3. So I'm sure that you must have had experiences, and more importantly, you must have figured out what is the traits of being a successful product. So, like, if someone's listening to us and they are an aspiring startup founder, so what would you say to them? Like, what are the important things that you should have in your product?
Well, I think the question on how to build a successful product is, how do you find people who want that product, right? Something they teach us in Y Combinator, um, which is like basically a startup school, is to always be talking to users. And so you really want to be from, so when we built Console, for the first 2 months, before we built anything, before we knew what we were gonna build, we had dozens of conversations every day. We pitched ideas, we wireframed, and we just got lots of feedback and tried to look for patterns and where there was an opportunity. And then we had a hypothesis of what we would design, and we spent a few months designing. But at least once a month, we would spend a few days of that showing the design back to that same group of people. And that's the idea, is to just be constantly iterating and showing. The biggest mistake people make is they have an idea and they just start building it. 3 months later, maybe they tell a person, or they say, hey, you need an NDA, I can't share this with you. You just want to share it with everybody. If your idea is so easy, look, really smart people who are talented are busy working on something. So I think that if you have an idea and you tell somebody, it's very unlikely someone is going to just take that idea. And if that is the case, if you tell somebody and they just take that idea, it was probably too easy an idea to steal that it would have gotten stolen anyway, right? So talking to people, sharing your idea, and it's all about the execution. It's not about the idea. It's about just doing the work and reiterating over time. That would be my kind of quick advice.
That is true. But again, see, don't spend too much time on the idea itself. Get executing, get working. So
Yeah.
when you say that you have to spend some time on hypothesizing, talking to consumers, wireframing things, so is that all a part of you working itself, or that can somehow take away your main focus from the product?
Yeah, so that's a good question. It's all, when you're talking with users, you are building the product. You're taking information, right? So with Console, right, for example, um, we had this idea that building a chat app with what's called decentralized identities like .eth or .btc. We just had an idea that that would be really valuable. And so talking with users in that case was um, at first maybe just having conversations on like what people like and don't like about the current things they have, and then making boards. We used a program called Miro, and we just started charting, all right, what are the 8 people like or dislike? Okay, this is a bunch of things they don't like. They don't like the privacy concerns. They don't own their data. They don't. Okay, so these are a list of concerns. Now I can take that and I can use a program like Figma, right, and do like you don't even need to be a designer. Make a quick wireframe, and then and now I go back to those people and I say, what about this? Now you have this. Now what would you do with this? Like, what would you imagine this would do? Would this be on a scale of 1 to 10? How valuable would this be in your life, right? And so you try to get feedback so you're building the product, and then then you go from the wireframe to the design to like a clickable prototype. It's like step by step. What you don't want to do is just like go right to code, because it's harder and more expensive to change code. So that's the idea. It's just iterate little bit at a time, But you are
No, I
building the
totally
product.
understand. I totally
Yeah.
understand. This thing makes sense. Okay, Chris. So most of my audience is student developers and entrepreneurs. So
Cool.
let's say someone is in their first or second year of college, and an idea pops into their mind of building something, or building a product.
Yeah.
But I cannot know everything at one point. I cannot know every language. I cannot know every framework. I cannot know everything. So how do you determine what is the best language or what is the best technology stack for your product?
Yeah, that's a really good question too. It's a hard one. So I think one way to think about it is, sometimes the thing that is the best. I mean, that's one way I think about it. It's like if you're really good at, let's say, Python, there's going to be a lot that you can do with Python, on a variety of different apps, and that you could also do if it was like Node or something, right? Or if it was Ruby. So what it comes down to in some ways, especially when you're a startup founder, like you're trying to just make some prototypes, is like it's all about moving quick and, like I said, getting it in front of people. So I mean, I guess a quick answer would be I think Python is pretty valuable. I think Ruby on Rails is pretty useful, although it's like maybe a little bit not as popular as much as it used to be a handful of years ago. But those two languages, like you could get up and running really quickly, especially Ruby on Rails. And I like that about it, especially if you're building an app, you just want to get something up and running. And then you could always go and change it later if you get funding and you want to build some big expensive product, you can always go and change those things later. So I guess my short answer is like Python or Ruby on Rails for a backend are pretty sweet. For the front end, everybody needs to know HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Like doesn't matter which backend you're using, you're always going to need to learn those languages. So some combination of that. Yeah, it's tricky, but I guess I wouldn't overthink it, would be my advice. It's like
Okay.
go with what feels good, or go with what they're teaching in your school. And maybe I'd avoid like some of the harder languages like Java or C or .NET. I don't know. Some of those are not great. I would not recommend for websites or for apps. Maybe that helps a little bit though. I'm not sure.
I get your point. I get your point. Okay, Chris. Now let's look into a detailed answer on this. Let's say I have an idea. I'm going to bet I have an idea of building an app like Twitter, but instead of text, I will have speech in there. So now, how do I go about it? I have no connections. I don't have any funding. I don't know any person who has built something. So how do I, a college student, go about it? How do I take the next steps to execute my plan?
Yeah. So let's break this down. So you're building an app and you said it has speech in there, like you can talk into it. Is
Yep.
that what you're
Instead
thinking?
of Twitter, let's take Twitter. Instead of text, everything is voice.
Okay.
Voice tweets, voice threads, everything is voice.
Okay. So the cool thing to know if you're like a college student and you're a freshman and maybe code is new to you, you might not know that there are APIs out there, right? So APIs are basically like sometimes people call them libraries, or they're basically like code that someone else has written that you can just kind of
Yep,
plug
totally.
into. And so if you want to do something with voice, let's say, you don't need to write that from scratch. No way. But you can use an existing platform. So what I would probably do, I'd do like voice API, right? At Google voice API, voice developer SDK, like some of these keywords, SDK, right? And you'll see what comes up. My guess is what you'll see are things like Twilio might come up. If it's chat, something like PubNub might come up. If it's I think if it's like translation, I'm sure Google has an API. I don't know what the best one is, but you would just start looking around and you see it. You might look at an example, you might look at some prices, and usually the next step there is you can usually just copy and paste some code. They try to make it easy as possible and bring it into your project, and then boom, you have voice in there. So I think Agora, is that the one too? Is looking for voice, but the main point, like lead a horse to water kind of point, is you just need to go and Google like what you want API or SDK, and you're going to find a lot of great examples, usually for free for developers to get started. And that might even give you some really good ideas for like what's possible. There's a lot of APIs out there, and not everybody knows they're out there. So sometimes just finding access to a cool API and making a use case of it can be a really good way to like innovate and build something that no one's ever built before.
In both of your startups, like 1 month and Console, you have co-founders. So like, how do you find a co-founder, or like this just happens that you two are sitting along and the idea pops up? How does that process look like?
That's a great question, because yeah, it's one of the most challenging things of starting a company. I mean, some tips for finding a co-founder would be, if you have one very valuable skill, then you become valuable. Oftentimes that's coding. Like if you can code, there's going to be talented business people out there, talented entrepreneurs who really want, because you're very rare. So, the skill, if you're starting a voice app situation, maybe having someone who's really good at audio recording, but usually code. But my point is, some really specific skill helps become more valuable. In addition to finding co-founders, it really helps to just like know a lot of people and be curious. So I found it really helpful. I mean, I'm a bit spoiled, I guess. I lived in New York, and I feel there's so many people. So yeah, after college, I moved to New York, and there's this meetups all the time, and the meetups are free. And you just go, you just meet people, just like see what they're working on, ask ideas, and they invite you to another meetup, and you just start meeting a lot of people. And I think there's some saying. I think it was. I forget who said it, but basically the idea is like people want to work with somebody who is really talented, or just like really easy to work with, or really cheap. But you only need to be like two of those things. So if you're really are really nice to work with, and you're really affordable, like you can like put in time to like work for free, people are probably people are like, oh, this is a nice guy, like I'll give him a chance. And so then when you start to become really good at it, then you could be a real mean person, and nobody. I'm just kidding. It's like Steve Jobs right now. But no, then when you get good at it, then you can charge more, of course, and you become more valuable. So yeah, I think that those are some of the tips. Just like go to meetups, like meet people, and I think people will eventually give you a chance if they see that you're a hard worker, and you're what I look for is just somebody who's somebody's always trying to learn and better themselves, and just curious and just like nice, because like you have to hang out with your co-founder like all the time, so that stuff helps. Yeah, hopefully that helps a little bit.
Yeah, it helps. And also, I guess that showcasing your work and speaking about it, that also helps. Like if you are a good developer and you go to a meetup, but if you're not showing your work, and if you're not speaking about yourself, if you're not able to sell yourself, sell your skills, then what's
Totally.
the use of that? So basically, that's what
Yeah,
I think.
Totally. I'll also add one more thing is like I've met so many people online now because of, because of COVID and work from home. But I've worked on some open source projects, and just from working on the open source project, I'll meet people who want to contribute to the project or who want to use it, and then we have a Zoom meeting. And it's nice sometimes to like get coffee and like meet someone, but it's also a lot more nice when like you can create value. If I build something and somebody wants to meet because they want to know how to use it, it's like helpful. Or if they want to contribute code to it, or I mean, even what you're doing here, it's like, you're very thoughtfully asking questions and you have an audience and you're building, like, you're helping me share my message. And like, I'm just happy to be here, hanging with you. So it's like, if you create a delightful product or like a reason, I think it helps people get excited, and it helps people, just want to potentially work with you more in the future. Like it just every little bit helps.
Basically, the essence is that get better at human interactions. At the end of the day, you have to talk to humans. If you are better at interacting, then you're good to go.
Yeah, but it helps. And for the introverts, I mean, it doesn't always necessarily mean you have to be talking, like interaction, but
Yeah,
it can just
totally.
be helpful, like help somebody with some comments and review their code, or offer some suggestions, or just something, help amplify their message if they're doing a good job. Just like, like it's like a lot of different ways. So yes, I agree.